This is the story of Catherine Hayes, a 28-year-old woman who thought she knew exactly who she was. She was the beloved granddaughter of billionaire real estate mogul Margaret Hayes. She'd been raised in luxury, promised an $18 million inheritance, groomed to take over the family empire. But then her grandmother did one of those trendy DNA ancestry tests for fun. And what that test revealed didn't just shock the family. It destroyed everything Catherine thought she knew about herself. Because according to the DNA results, Catherine wasn't Margaret's biological granddaughter. And Margaret had exactly 30 days to decide whether to leave her fortune to someone who wasn't really family. Before I tell you how one DNA test unraveled a 28-year-old lie and tore apart an $18 million inheritance, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for Story Matrix Hub. Because this story has more family secrets, more shocking revelations, and more devastating consequences than you can imagine. You're going to want to hear every twist. Now let me tell you about Catherine, the woman who discovered that her entire identity was a lie. Catherine Hayes grew up in the kind of wealth most people only see in movies. Her grandmother, Margaret Hayes, was a self-made billionaire. She'd built a real estate empire from nothing, starting with a single rental property in the 1970s and building it into a portfolio worth over $300 million by the time she retired. Margaret was a legend in Boston real estate circles. Tough, brilliant, uncompromising. She'd made her fortune when women weren't supposed to be in business at all, let alone dominating it. She had one child, a son named Thomas. Catherine's father. Thomas Hayes was everything Margaret wasn't. Weak, indecisive, more interested in sailing and country clubs than business. Margaret had tried to groom him to take over the company, but Thomas had zero interest. "I don't want your empire, Mother," he'd told her countless times. "I want to live my own life." So Thomas married young, a woman named Rebecca who came from old Boston money, and had Catherine in 1995. Margaret was disappointed in her son, but she adored her granddaughter from the moment Catherine was born. "Finally," Margaret said, holding baby Catherine for the first time, "someone worthy of carrying on my legacy." Catherine grew up splitting time between her parents' Beacon Hill townhouse and Margaret's estate in the Berkshires. Every summer, every holiday, Catherine was with her grandmother. Margaret taught Catherine everything. Business strategy, negotiation tactics, property valuation, market analysis. By the time Catherine was 16, she was sitting in on board meetings. By 18, she had her real estate license. By 25, she was managing a significant portion of the Hayes family portfolio. "You're the daughter I should have had," Margaret told Catherine often. "Thomas was a disappointment, but you're everything." Catherine loved her grandmother fiercely. Margaret was her hero, her mentor, her best friend. They talked every day, had dinner together twice a week, traveled together. The bond was unbreakable. Or so Catherine thought. Thomas and Rebecca, Catherine's parents, had a toxic marriage. They fought constantly, about money, about social status, about everything. They stayed together for Catherine's sake, but everyone knew it was really about maintaining their social position. Thomas drank too much. Rebecca had affairs. It was a disaster. They died together in a car accident when Catherine was 23. Thomas had been driving drunk, crashed into a tree. Both killed instantly. Catherine was devastated. Despite their problems, they were her parents. Margaret helped her through it, as she always did. "You still have me," Margaret said at the funeral. "You'll always have me." After her parents died, Catherine became even closer to Margaret. She was all the family Catherine had left. No siblings, no aunts or uncles that mattered. No cousins she was close to. Just Margaret. And Margaret made it very clear. Catherine was her heir. "When I die," Margaret told Catherine on her 25th birthday, "everything goes to you. The company, the properties, the investments. All of it. You've earned it." Margaret's estate was worth approximately $18 million at that point. She'd sold the business, but kept the most valuable properties and had substantial investments. Catherine didn't care about the money, though. She had a successful career of her own. What mattered was that Margaret trusted her, believed in her, wanted her to carry on the legacy. Last year, when Catherine was 27, Margaret turned 80. For her birthday, Catherine gave her one of those DNA ancestry kits. The trendy ones everyone was doing, 23andMe or Ancestry DNA. "It'll be fun, grandmother," Catherine said. "See where the family really comes from. You always said we had Irish roots. Let's find out for sure." Margaret laughed. "I know where I come from. Hard work and determination. But fine, I'll humor you. They did it together, actually. Spit in the tubes, sent them off, forgot about it. 6 weeks later, the results came back. Catherine logged into her account first, excited to see the breakdown. Mostly British and Irish, as expected. Some Scandinavian. Normal results. Then she called Margaret. Did you check yours yet? Not yet. Tell me, what does it say about our family? Mostly Irish and English. Some Norwegian. Nothing too surprising. Check yours. Margaret logged in while Catherine was still on the phone. There was a long silence. Grandmother? You there? Catherine. Margaret's voice was strange. Cold. I need you to come to the estate. Now. What's wrong? Just come. Immediately. Catherine drove to the Berkshires, confused and worried. Margaret had sounded genuinely upset, which was rare. Margaret didn't get upset. She got angry or she got strategic, but never upset. When Catherine arrived, Margaret was in her study, the DNA results printed out in front of her. Sit down, Margaret said. Grandmother, what's going on? Look at this. Margaret pushed the papers across the desk. Catherine looked. The ancestry breakdown was similar to hers. But there was another section, DNA relatives. The website had found people who shared DNA with Margaret. Cousins, distant relatives. Normal stuff. Except, Catherine's name wasn't on the list. I don't understand, Catherine said. Neither do I. Margaret's voice was ice. If you're my biological granddaughter, you should show up as one of my closest DNA matches. But you don't. You're not there at all. That has to be a mistake. These tests aren't perfect. I called the company. Spoke to their genetic counselor. There's no mistake. If you were my granddaughter, you'd be on this list. You'd share approximately 25% of my DNA. But you share 0%. The room felt like it was spinning. That's impossible, Catherine whispered. That's what I thought. So I had them run it again. Rush processing. The results came back this morning. Margaret pulled out another paper. Same result. You are not my biological granddaughter. Catherine couldn't breathe. There has to be an explanation. There is. You're not Thomas's biological daughter. No. No, that's insane. Mom wouldn't, Dad wouldn't. Your mother had multiple affairs, Catherine. Everyone knew it. What we didn't know was that one of those affairs produced you. You don't know that. I know that you don't share my DNA. Which means you don't share Thomas's DNA. Which means Thomas wasn't your father. Catherine stood up, shaking. I need to talk to someone. Family friends, someone who knew them. I already did. I called Evelyn Morrison. Evelyn had been Rebecca's best friend. She confirmed what I suspected. Your mother had an affair in early 1994. 9 months before you were born. She never told Thomas. She passed you off as his daughter. Evelyn is lying. Evelyn has emails. Rebecca confessed everything to her years ago. She kept the emails. She showed them to me. Catherine felt like she was going to throw up. So who is my father? I don't know. Rebecca never told Evelyn his name. Just that he was someone important, and that telling Thomas would ruin everything. Catherine sat down again, her legs giving out. So what does this mean? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was flat, businesslike. It means you're not my granddaughter. Not biologically. But I'm still me. I'm still the person you raised, mentored, loved. You're the child of some stranger. An affair baby. A lie. Grandmother, please. I need time to think about this. About what it means. About my will. Catherine's blood ran cold. Your will. I left everything to you because you were my flesh and blood. My legacy. But you're not. You're not family at all. I'm still Catherine. I'm still the granddaughter who spent every summer with you, who learned business from you, who deceived me for 28 years. I didn't know. I'm a victim in this too. Perhaps. But it doesn't change the facts. Margaret stood up. I need you to leave. I need to think. Grandmother, please don't do this. Leave. Now. Catherine left. She drove back to Boston in a fog, crying so hard she could barely see the road. When she got home, she called Evelyn Morrison. You told her, Catherine said when Evelyn answered. You told her about my mother's affair. She asked me directly. What was I supposed to do, lie? Yes. You were supposed to lie. My mother is dead. She can't defend herself. And now you've destroyed my relationship with my grandmother. Catherine, I'm sorry. But Margaret deserved to know the truth. Did she? Did she really? What good does this truth do anyone? The truth always matters. That's easy for you to say. You didn't just lose your entire family. Catherine hung up. Over the next week, she tried calling Margaret repeatedly. No answer. She drove to the estate. Margaret wouldn't see her. Finally, after 10 days, Margaret's lawyer called. Ms. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes would like to meet with you. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., at her estate. Please be prompt. Catherine arrived at exactly 2 p.m. Margaret was in her study with her lawyer, Jonathan Chun, a man Catherine had known since childhood. Sit down, Catherine, Margaret said. Her voice was formal, distant. Catherine sat. I've spent the last 10 days researching, thinking, and consulting with Jonathan about my options. I've made some decisions. Grandmother. Don't call me that. You're not my granddaughter. The words were like a slap. I'm changing my will, Margaret continued. I had originally left everything to you, the properties, the investments, all of it. Approximately $18 million. But given recent revelations, that's no longer appropriate. Please don't do this. I'm leaving you $500,000. That's more than generous for someone who is not my family. Catherine felt tears streaming down her face. This isn't about money. This is about you rejecting me. I'm not rejecting you. I'm simply acknowledging reality. You are not my heir. The rest of my estate will be divided among various charities and distant relatives who actually share my blood. We've spent 28 years together. Doesn't that count for anything? It counted for everything when I thought you were my granddaughter. Now that I know you're not, it counts for considerably less. So our entire relationship was only about blood? Not about love, not about the time we spent together, not about who I actually am. Blood matters, Catherine. Family matters. Legacy matters. And you're not family. Jonathan looked uncomfortable. Margaret, perhaps we should. Stay out of this, Jonathan. This is my decision. Catherine stood up. Fine. Take your money. Give it to strangers if that's what makes you happy. But you're wrong about one thing. What's that? I am your granddaughter. Not because of DNA, but because of everything you taught me, everything we shared, every moment we spent together. That's what makes someone family. Not blood. How noble. But my will says otherwise. Catherine walked to the door. Then she turned back. You're going to regret this. Not because of the money, but because you're letting one DNA test destroy 28 years of love. And when you're dying, surrounded by distant relatives and charity representatives who don't actually care about you, you're going to realize that the person who truly loved you was the one you pushed away. Get out. Catherine left. And that's when the real war began. Catherine spent the first week after the meeting in shock. She'd lost her grandmother, the most important person in her life, over something she had no control over. A lie her dead mother had told nearly 3 decades ago. It felt unbearably unfair. Her best friend, Nina, tried to help. Maybe she'll change her mind. Give her time to process. You didn't see her face, Nina. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Like I'd personally deceived her. But you didn't know. She doesn't care. To her, I'm not family anymore. I'm just nothing. Catherine's therapist, Dr. Lisa Park, had a different perspective. Your grandmother is dealing with a massive betrayal. Not by you, but by her son and daughter-in-law. She trusted them, and they lied. Now she's taking that anger out on you. So what do? You can wait and hope she comes around. Or you can accept that some relationships can't be salvaged. But Catherine couldn't accept that. Not yet. She started researching. If she could find out who her biological father was, maybe that would help. Maybe if Margaret knew the whole story, knew who Catherine really was, it would change things. Catherine contacted the DNA testing company and asked for additional analysis. They connected her with a genetic genealogist named Patricia Mendez. Your biological father should show up in your DNA matches, Patricia explained. Maybe not directly, but through his relatives. We can build a family tree and figure out who he is. How long will that take? Depends on how many relatives are in the database. Could be weeks, could be months. I need to know now. Then we start with what we have. Do you have any information about your mother's life around the time of your conception? Catherine called Evelyn Morrison again, despite her anger. I need to know everything about my mother's affair, Catherine said. Everything Rebecca told you. Evelyn sighed. Catherine, I don't think. Please. You already destroyed my relationship with Margaret. The least you can do is help me find out who I actually am. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then, fine. Come over tomorrow. The next day, Catherine sat in Evelyn's living room while Evelyn pulled out old emails printed and saved in a folder. Your mother was my best friend, Evelyn said. I loved her. But she was complicated. Her marriage to Thomas was arranged, essentially. Their families wanted the union. Old money marrying into new money. She went along with it, even though she didn't love him. She never loved my Thomas? She cared about him. But love? No. And Thomas didn't love her either. They were business partners who happened to be married. Evelyn handed Catherine a printed email dated March 1994. Evie, I've done something terrible. I met someone. A man. We've been seeing each other for 3 months. I know I should stop, but I can't. He makes me feel alive in a way Thomas never has. I think I might be falling in love. Another email from May 1994. I'm pregnant. I don't know what to do. It could be Thomas's, but I don't think so. The timing is wrong. I think it's his. If Thomas finds out, everything falls apart. The marriage, the social standing, Margaret's support. Everything. I can't tell anyone. I can't even tell him. She never told my biological father she was pregnant, not according to these emails. So he has no idea I exist? Probably not. Catherine read through more emails. Rebecca never mentioned the man's name, but there were clues. He's brilliant, Evie. So much smarter than Thomas. And ambitious. He's going to change the world someday. I can feel it. We met at a charity auction. I shouldn't have talked to him, but he was so interesting. He called today. Asked me to leave Thomas. I can't. I won't. But God, it's tempting. Catherine looked up. A charity auction in late 1993 or early 1994. That's something. What auctions did my mother attend? Evelyn thought about it. She was on the board for several charities back then. The Children's Hospital Gala, the Museum of Fine Arts Benefit, the Symphony Fundraiser. She attended all of those. Do you have guest lists? From 30 years ago? No. But the charities might have archives. Catherine spent the next week tracking down old records. Most charities had terrible record-keeping from that era, but she finally found something promising. The Children's Hospital Gala from December 1993 had digitized their records. There were 347 attendees. Catherine cross-referenced the list with her DNA matches on the Ancestry website. And she found something. A man named David Richardson had attended the gala. His nephew, Kevin Richardson, showed up as a third cousin match to Catherine on the DNA website. Patricia, Catherine called her genetic genealogist. I think I found a connection. David Richardson. Patricia ran the calculations. If Kevin is your third cousin, that would make David your biological father. The DNA math checks out. Catherine Googled David Richardson. He was a tech entrepreneur, now 62 years old. He'd founded a software company in the 1990s that had been acquired by Microsoft for hundreds of millions. He was married, had 3 children, lived in Seattle. He had no idea Catherine existed. Catherine stared at his photo. He had her eyes. Her nose. This was her biological father. What are you going to do? Nina asked when Catherine showed her the discovery. I don't know. Contact him? Tell him he has a daughter he never knew about. That could blow up his entire life. His life? What about mine? His affair with my mother created me, and now I've lost everything because of it. So what do you want? Money? A relationship? An apology? I want Margaret back. But I don't know how to make that happen. Catherine decided to reach out to David Richardson. She found his email through his company's website and sent a carefully worded message. Mr. Richardson, my name is Catherine Hayes. I was born in July 1995 in Boston. My mother was Rebecca Hayes, née Morrison. I recently discovered through DNA testing that you are my biological father. I'm not contacting you for money or to disrupt your life. I simply wanted you to know that I exist. If you'd like to discuss this further, I'm willing to provide DNA confirmation. Sincerely, Catherine. She sent the email and waited. 2 days later, he responded. Catherine, I've received your email and I'm frankly shocked. I knew Rebecca briefly in 1993 to 1994, but I had no idea she was pregnant. If what you're saying is true, this is life-changing information. I'd like to verify this through official DNA testing before we proceed further. I'm sure you understand. I'll be in Boston next week for business. Can we meet? David. They met at a neutral location, a hotel bar in downtown Boston. David Richardson looked exactly like his photos, tall, silver-haired, distinguished. Successful. You have my eyes, he said when he saw Catherine. My God. They sat down, ordered coffee, stared at each other. Tell me about Rebecca, David said. How did we? You tell me. You're the one who had the affair with her. David winced. It wasn't an affair exactly. I was single. She was. He paused. She was married, but she said it was complicated. We saw each other for about 4 months. Late 1993 to early 1994. Then she ended it abruptly. Said she couldn't leave her husband. I accepted it and moved on. She never told you she was pregnant. No. If she had, I would have. I don't know what I would have done. But I would have done something. I wouldn't have just disappeared. Why didn't you fight for her? If you cared about her? Because she made it clear there was no future. She chose her marriage. I was just a temporary escape for her. Catherine felt a wave of sadness. For her mother, trapped in a loveless marriage. For David, who'd never known he had a daughter. For herself, caught in the middle of it all. I need to confirm this, David said. No offense, but I understand. I brought a DNA test kit. Catherine pulled it out of her bag. We can do it right now if you want. They did the test. Sent it off to a lab David chose. 3 days later, the results came back. 99.99% probability of paternity. David called her immediately. It's confirmed. You're my daughter. I know. Catherine, I don't know what to say. I have a family. A wife, 3 kids. They don't know about you. This is going to be complicated. I'm not trying to insert myself into your life. I just needed to know who you are. But I want to know you. You're my daughter. That matters. Does it? Because my grandmother seems to think DNA is everything, and the moment she found out I wasn't biologically her granddaughter, she cut me out completely. Tell me what happened. Catherine told him everything. The DNA test, Margaret's reaction, the changed will, the rejection. David listened quietly. When she finished, he said, Your grandmother is wrong. Tell her that. I will if you want me to. But Catherine, I think there's something else going on here. What do you mean? Margaret didn't just reject you because of the DNA. She rejected you because she feels betrayed. By her son, by your mother, by the universe. She's lashing out at the only person she can you. So what do? You remind her that love is a choice. Family is a choice. And she's choosing wrong. David offered to help Catherine however he could. He even offered money. Anything you need. But Catherine refused. I don't want your money. I have my own career. Then what do you want? I want my grandmother back. But I don't think that's possible. Maybe not. But maybe you don't need her approval to move forward. Catherine thought about that. Maybe David was right. Maybe she needed to stop waiting for Margaret to change her mind and start building her own life. But then, 2 weeks later, something changed. Margaret had a heart attack. It was mild, she survived, was in the hospital for observation. But it scared everyone. Jonathan Chun, her lawyer, called Catherine. She's asking for you. She wants to see me? Yes. She's in Mass General, room 412. Catherine drove to the hospital, heart pounding. This was it. Maybe Margaret had realized her mistake. Maybe the brush with death had made her see what really mattered. She walked into the room. Margaret was in the hospital bed, looking smaller and older than Catherine had ever seen her. Grandmother, Catherine said softly. Don't call me that, Margaret said. But her voice was weak, not angry. Okay, Margaret. Come here. Sit down. Catherine sat in the chair beside the bed. I almost died, Margaret said. Did they tell you? They said it was mild. At 80 years old, nothing is mild. I could have died. And I realized something. What? Margaret looked at her. Really looked at her. I don't want to die angry. And I don't want to die alone. You're not alone. Yes, I am. I pushed away the one person who actually loved me. For what? Pride. Principle? Some idea of what family should be. Catherine felt tears forming. So you've changed your mind? Margaret paused. I don't know. I'm still angry. Still hurt. Still feel betrayed. But I also miss you. And I don't know which feeling is stronger. I never lied to you. I never betrayed you. I'm the same person I've always been. I know. Logically, I know that. But emotionally, it still feels like deception. So what happens now? I don't know. But I wanted to see you. To tell you that I'm thinking about things. Thinking about your will? Thinking about everything. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. A crack in the wall Margaret had built. Catherine left the hospital with a tiny bit of hope. But what she didn't know was that Margaret's family, her distant relatives who stood to inherit millions if Catherine was cut out, had heard about the hospital visit. And they were about to make sure that Catherine never got back into Margaret's will. Margaret had cousins. Lots of them. She'd grown up as one of 6 children in a working-class Irish Catholic family in South Boston. Most of her siblings had died over the years, but they'd left behind children and grandchildren. Dozens of them. Margaret had never been particularly close to these relatives. They were townies, as she put it, working-class people who'd never left South Boston, who worked as cops and teachers and construction workers. Margaret had escaped that life, built an empire, moved to the Berkshires. She sent Christmas cards to her relatives but rarely saw them. Until the will changed. When word got out that Margaret's granddaughter wasn't really her granddaughter, and that Margaret was redistributing her estate, suddenly all those distant relatives became very interested in maintaining relationships. The ringleader was Patrick Flynn, Margaret's first cousin once removed. He was 55, a retired Boston police officer who now ran a small security business. Patrick had always resented Margaret. She'd made millions while his family struggled. She lived in a mansion while he lived in a triple-decker in Southie. She'd never helped the family financially. They need to make their own way, she'd always said. But now Patrick stood to inherit approximately $2 million from Margaret's revised will. That was life-changing money for someone like Patrick. And he was determined to make sure Catherine didn't get it back. "We need to make sure Margaret sticks to her guns," Patrick told his siblings and cousins at a family meeting. "This Catherine girl is trying to worm her way back in. We saw her at the hospital." "What do you want us to do?" his sister Maureen asked. "We need to remind Margaret why she cut Catherine out in the first place. The girl's not family. She's the product of an affair. She's been deceiving Margaret for almost 30 years. She didn't know she was deceiving anyone," pointed out Patrick's cousin Dennis. "Doesn't matter. What matters is that Margaret made the right decision, and now she's wavering. We need to shore up her resolve." Over the next few weeks, Patrick organized a campaign. He and other relatives started visiting Margaret regularly, bringing flowers, making small talk, reminding her that they were her real family. "Remember when we were kids, Margaret?" Patrick would say. "Remember those summers in Southie? That's family. Blood family. Not some girl whose mother lied about paternity." Margaret was still weak from the heart attack, still emotionally vulnerable. The attention from her cousins was comforting. "They're right," she told Jonathan Chin, her lawyer. "Family is blood. Catherine isn't my blood. With respect, Margaret, you've never cared about these cousins before." "Why now?" "Because they're here. They're visiting me. They care. They care about your will. Don't be cynical, Jonathan." But Jonathan was right to be cynical. Patrick wasn't just visiting. He was also gathering information to use against Catherine. He hired a private investigator to dig into Catherine's life, looking for anything that could be used to turn Margaret against her permanently. The investigator, a man named Tony Russo, spent 2 weeks following Catherine, researching her background, interviewing people she knew. "She's clean," Tony reported to Patrick. "Good career, no scandals, no debts, no drama. She's exactly what she appears to be." "There has to be something," Patrick insisted. "Everyone has skeletons. Not her." "Sorry." Patrick was frustrated. Without dirt on Catherine, his only strategy was to keep Margaret's anger fresh. So he decided to create a scandal. Patrick reached out to a local news reporter he knew from his police days. "I've got a story for you. Wealthy Boston heiress discovers her granddaughter is actually the product of an affair. Drama over an $18 million inheritance. It's got everything." The reporter, Lisa Chun, no relation to Margaret's lawyer, was interested. "Can you get me interviews? I can get you access to the family members who are being disinherited in favor of this imposter." "Who's the granddaughter?" "Catherine Hayes. Works in real estate. Thinks she's entitled to millions that should go to Margaret's real family." Lisa Chin contacted Catherine for comment. Catherine refused to speak to press. So Lisa wrote the story anyway, using Patrick and other relatives as sources. The headline: Boston real estate heiress cuts out granddaughter after DNA reveals decades-long deception. The article was brutal. It painted Catherine as someone who'd lived a lie, benefited from fraud, and was now fighting to keep money that wasn't rightfully hers. "The real victims here are Margaret Hayes' legitimate relatives," Patrick was quoted as saying. "People who actually share her blood, who've been overlooked for years while this girl played dress-up as the favorite granddaughter." The article went viral in Boston social circles. Everyone was talking about it. Catherine's phone started ringing. Reporters, gossip bloggers, people she barely knew wanting details. "How does it feel to lose an $18 million inheritance? Did you ever suspect you weren't really Thomas Hayes' daughter?" Is it true you're fighting the will? Catherine stopped answering her phone. This is a nightmare, she told Nina. They're destroying my reputation. Sue them for defamation. And make it worse? No. I just want this to go away. But it wasn't going away. If anything, it was getting worse. Patrick's next move was to suggest to Margaret that Catherine might challenge the will in court. She has grounds, Patrick told Margaret during one of his visits. She was raised as your granddaughter. You promised her the inheritance. She could argue that she relied on those promises to her detriment. Catherine wouldn't do that, Margaret said. Are you sure? She's already contacted that biological father of hers, David Richardson. He's rich. He could fund a legal challenge. Margaret's face hardened. She contacted her father? You didn't know? She tracked him down, met with him. They're apparently building a relationship. This was true, though Patrick made it sound more nefarious than it was. Catherine had met with David a few times, trying to understand her own origins. It wasn't a scheme. But to Margaret, already feeling betrayed, it sounded like Catherine was building alliances against her. I don't want her challenging my will, Margaret said. Then you need to make sure the will is ironclad. Add a no-contest clause. If she challenges it, she gets nothing. Jonathan Chin was present for this conversation. He didn't like where it was going. Margaret, before you make any changes, perhaps you should speak with Catherine directly. Why? So she can manipulate me again. She's never manipulated you. She didn't even know about the deception. She knows now. And she's already moving on, building relationships with her new father while abandoning me. That's not what's happening. Jonathan, add the no-contest clause. I want my will protected. Jonathan reluctantly agreed. Meanwhile, Catherine had no idea that the walls were closing in around her. She was trying to move forward with her life. She'd had a few more meetings with David Richardson, who was genuinely trying to be supportive. My wife knows about you now, David said. She's processing it, but she wants to meet you if you're open to that. I don't want to cause problems in your marriage. You're not causing problems. I caused problems by having an affair 30 years ago. But you're my daughter, and I want to know you. Catherine was touched. For the first time in months, someone was choosing her. Not because of what she could inherit, not because of what she represented, but just because of who she was. They had dinner together, Catherine, David, and his wife Rachel. It was awkward at first, but Rachel was surprisingly gracious. This isn't your fault, Rachel told Catherine. None of this is your fault. You're just a person trying to understand where you came from. Thank you for being so understanding. I'm not happy about it, Rachel admitted. But I'm not going to punish you for your parents' choices. Catherine wished Margaret could hear that. Could understand that acceptance wasn't about DNA, it was about choosing love over anger. But Margaret wasn't ready to hear it. 3 months after the heart attack, Margaret called a family meeting. She invited all her cousins, their children, her lawyer Jonathan, and, surprisingly, Catherine. I don't think you should go, Nina advised. It's a trap. Maybe. But if there's any chance to fix this, I have to try. Catherine drove to Margaret's estate, her stomach in knots. When she arrived, the house was full of people. Patrick Flynn and his family. Maureen and her children. Dennis and his wife. At least 20 relatives Catherine barely knew. They all stared at her when she walked in. Well, well, Patrick said. The prodigal granddaughter returns. Patrick, shut up, Jonathan Chin said sharply. Margaret was seated in her favorite chair, looking regal despite her recent health scare. She waited until everyone was seated. I've called you all here to make an announcement, Margaret began. I've been thinking a great deal about my will, about family, about what matters. Catherine held her breath. I've decided to finalize the changes I made 3 months ago. The bulk of my estate will be divided among my blood relatives. She gestured to Patrick and the others. People who share my DNA, my heritage, my family history. Catherine felt like she'd been punched. Catherine will receive $500,000, as previously stated. I've added a no-contest clause. If anyone challenges this will, they forfeit everything. Patrick was smiling. The other relatives looked pleased. Additionally, Margaret continued, I'm creating a trust to benefit various charities I support. The Children's Hospital, the Museum of Fine Arts, others. My legacy will live on through good works. That's very generous, Patrick said smoothly. Margaret turned to Catherine. Do you have anything to say? Catherine stood up. She was done begging. Done trying to prove her worth to someone who couldn't see it. Yes. I have something to say. She looked around the room. Most of you don't know me. You've never cared about Margaret before. But suddenly now that there's money involved, you're all devoted family members. Patrick's face reddened. How dare you? I dare because it's true. You're vultures, all of you. Circling around, waiting for her to die so you can collect. Catherine, Margaret said sharply. That's enough. No, it's not enough. Because you're making the biggest mistake of your life, and I'm the only one brave enough to tell you. Catherine looked at Margaret. You taught me that legacy isn't about blood. It's about what you build, what you create, what you leave behind. You built an empire from nothing. You showed me that determination and intelligence matter more than where you come from. That's different. How? How is it different? You weren't born into wealth. You created it. I wasn't born into your family biologically, but we created a family together. Through choice, through love, through 28 years of choosing each other every single day. The room was silent. You're letting these people, Catherine gestured at Patrick and the others, destroy what we built together because of one DNA test. And 50 years from now, do you know who's going to remember you? Not them. Not the charities. Me. Because I'm the only person in this room who actually loves you. Margaret's eyes were glistening, but her jaw was set. I've made my decision. Then I feel sorry for you. Because you're choosing DNA over love. Blood over history. And that makes you exactly like everyone who ever underestimated you because you were a woman, or poor, or Irish. You became everything you fought against. Catherine walked to the door. Then she turned back one last time. Keep your money. Give it to Patrick and his family. They'll blow through it in 5 years, and you'll be forgotten. But I'll never forget you. I'll never forget what you taught me. And I'll carry your real legacy forward. The lesson that you can be more than where you started. Even if you forgot that lesson yourself. She walked out. Behind her, the room erupted in chaos. Patrick was gloating. Jonathan was arguing with Margaret. Other relatives were congratulating themselves. And Margaret sat in her chair, watching Catherine leave, realizing too late what she'd just lost. Margaret Hayes died in her sleep 8 months after that final family meeting. Another heart attack, but this time there was no coming back. She was 81. Jonathan Chin called Catherine with the news. She's gone, Catherine. I'm sorry. Catherine felt numb. Not sad, exactly. She'd already grieved the loss of her grandmother months ago. This was just making it official. When's the funeral? Saturday. Will you come? I don't know. She would have wanted you there. Would she? She spent the last year of her life making it very clear I wasn't family. Catherine, there's something you should know. Before she died. I don't want to hear it, Jonathan. Whatever deathbed regrets she had, they're too late. Catherine hung up. But she did go to the funeral. Not for Margaret, but for herself. For closure. The service was at the same church where Margaret and her late husband had married 60 years ago. The church was packed, business associates, society friends, charity board members, and of course, all those distant relatives who were about to become very rich. Catherine sat in the back. She didn't want to be part of the family section, didn't want to pretend. Patrick Flynn noticed her. He walked over before the service started. Surprised to see you here, he said. Thought you'd be too bitter. I'm here to say goodbye to the woman who raised me. Not to make nice with her vultures. Careful. We're the family now. You're just the help. Catherine stood up, facing him. Enjoy your inheritance, Patrick. I hope it was worth selling your soul. My soul is just fine. And $2 million richer. The service began before Catherine could respond. It was standard. Priest talking about Margaret's accomplishments, her generosity, her strength. Several people gave eulogies. Patrick gave one, of course. Aunt Margaret was a role model to all of us. She never forgot where she came from. She never forgot her real family. Catherine felt sick. Then Jonathan Chin stood up. I was Margaret's attorney for 35 years. But more than that, I was her friend. And I'd like to say something that Margaret would have wanted said. He pulled out a piece of paper. Margaret wrote this 2 weeks before she died. She asked me to read it at her funeral. Catherine's breath caught. What was this? Jonathan began reading. If you're hearing this, I'm dead. And I hope you're all very happy with yourselves. I spent the last year of my life surrounded by relatives who suddenly cared about me only because I was dying and rich. They visited, they smiled, they pretended to love me. And I let them because I was angry and hurt, and I wanted to believe that DNA mattered more than everything else. But here's the truth, I died alone. Surrounded by family, but alone. Because the only person who truly loved me, the person I pushed away, wasn't there. Catherine, if you're hearing this, I'm sorry. I was wrong. About everything. You were my granddaughter in every way that mattered. Blood didn't make us family, love did. And I destroyed that because I was too proud to admit I was wrong. The church was silent. Catherine was crying. She couldn't help it. Jonathan continued reading. To my cousins and their children, you'll get your money. You earned it by being the family I thought I wanted. But you didn't earn my love, and you didn't earn my respect. You were mercenaries, and I was too foolish to see it. To Catherine, I'm sorry I can't take back the last year. I'm sorry I wasted our final time together being angry instead of grateful. You were the best thing in my life, and I threw you away. I hope someday you can forgive me. Not for me. I'll be dead, but for yourself. Don't carry this anger. It only hurts you. Live the life I taught you to live. Be strong, be brilliant, be uncompromising. Build something that matters. And know that even though I didn't show it at the end, I loved you. I always loved you. Margaret. Jonathan folded the paper. That was written 2 weeks before she died. She gave it to me with instructions to read it today. Patrick looked furious. Other relatives looked uncomfortable. They'd just been publicly called out as mercenaries. After the service, people approached Catherine. I'm so sorry for your loss, said several people who'd ignored her for months. David Richardson was there. He'd flown in from Seattle. Are you okay? I don't know. That letter, why now? Why couldn't she say that when she was alive? Pride. Fear. Stubbornness. Pick one. Catherine's phone buzzed. A text from Jonathan. Can you come to my office Monday? We need to discuss the will. What's there to discuss? She left me $500,000 and everyone else gets millions. Just come. Please. Monday morning, Catherine went to Jonathan's office. She expected a quick meeting. Sign some papers, collect her inheritance, move on. Instead, she walked in to find Patrick Flynn and several other relatives already there, looking angry. What's going on? Catherine asked. Sit down, Jonathan said. We have a situation. What kind of situation? Jonathan pulled out a document. 3 weeks before Margaret died, she came to my office. She wanted to make changes to her will. Patrick stood up. That's impossible. She was mentally incompetent by then. She was perfectly lucid. I have medical documentation. She knew exactly what she was doing. What changes? Catherine asked. Jonathan looked at her. She changed her will back. Not completely, but significantly. What does that mean? It means the will I'm about to read is not the one Patrick and his family expected. Jonathan began reading. I, Margaret Hayes, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke my previous will dated June 15th, 2023, and establish this as my final will and testament. To my cousin Patrick Flynn and his family, I leave $100,000 total, to be divided among them as they see fit. This is more than generous for people who only visited me when I was dying. To my various other cousins and their descendants, I leave $50,000 each. To the charities I support, Children's Hospital, Museum of Fine Arts, Symphony Orchestra, I leave $3 million to be divided equally. The remainder of my estate, including all property, investments, and personal effects, I leave to Catherine Hayes. Because DNA doesn't make someone family. Love does. And Catherine was the only person who truly loved me. Silence. Then Patrick exploded. This is fraud. She was manipulated. Catherine got to her. I have documentation showing Catherine hadn't spoken to Margaret in 8 months, Jonathan said calmly. This was entirely Margaret's decision. We'll contest it. There's a no contest clause. If you contest, you get nothing. Then we'll prove she was incompetent. Good luck. I have 3 doctors who evaluated her and confirmed she was completely competent. Catherine was in shock. How much? What's the remainder? Jonathan looked at her. After the charitable donations and the payments to relatives, approximately $14 million. Catherine sat down heavily. She left me $14 million? She left you everything that mattered to her. The properties, the portfolio, everything she built. Patrick was red-faced. This is bullshit. We'll sue. We'll. You'll lose, Jonathan said. And you'll waste the $100,000 you just inherited on legal fees. Take the money and leave. Patrick stormed out, followed by the other relatives. They were furious. Catherine just sat there, staring at Jonathan. Why? She finally asked. Why did she change her mind? Because she realized she was wrong. Too late to fix your relationship, but not too late to fix this. I don't want her money. I wanted her. I know, but this is what she could give you. Her legacy. Her empire. Everything she built. She wanted you to have it because you were the only one who understood what it meant. Catherine started crying. Not tears of joy, tears of grief. For the lost time, for the relationship destroyed by pride, for the year they could have had together. There's one more thing, Jonathan said. He pulled out a smaller envelope. She left you a personal letter. She gave it to me the day she made the new will. Catherine took the envelope with shaking hands. She opened it and read. My darling Catherine, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I hope you can forgive a stubborn old woman who let pride destroy the most important relationship in her life. I spent 50 years proving that a poor Irish girl from Southie could build an empire. I thought that meant blood and heritage mattered. But I was wrong. What mattered was determination, love, and the strength to build something from nothing. You had all of those things. You were my true heir, not because of DNA, but because you inherited my spirit. I'm sorry I couldn't see that until it was too late. I'm sorry I wasted our last year together. I'm sorry I chose anger over love. But I'm giving you this empire now. Not as an apology, nothing can make up for what I did, but as an acknowledgement. You were right. You were always right. Build something beautiful with this. Be the woman I taught you to be. And maybe someday, tell your own children about the stubborn old woman who loved you but was too proud to admit she was wrong. I love you, Catherine. I always did. I just forgot how to show it. Margaret. Catherine folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. What will you do now? Jonathan asked. I don't know. Accept the inheritance, I guess. Honor her memory. She would have wanted that. Catherine stood up to leave. Then she turned back. Jonathan, did she suffer? At the end? No. She died peacefully in her sleep. Was she alone? Jonathan hesitated. Then, yes. She was alone. Catherine nodded. That was Margaret's choice. She'd pushed everyone away, and she died alone. It was a cautionary tale, and Catherine was determined to learn from it. The first month after Margaret's death was chaos. Patrick Flynn filed a lawsuit anyway, despite the no contest clause. Margaret was unduly influenced, the lawsuit claimed. Catherine Hayes manipulated a dying woman. Jonathan Chin shut it down within 3 weeks. Catherine hadn't spoken to Margaret in 8 months. There was zero contact. The doctors all confirmed Margaret was competent. This is frivolous. The judge agreed. Patrick's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, and as per the no contest clause, he forfeited his $100,000 inheritance. You got greedy, Jonathan told Patrick. You could have walked away with something. Now you get nothing. Patrick left the courthouse furious, but there was nothing he could do. The other relatives, seeing what happened to Patrick, didn't contest. They took their $50,000 payouts and disappeared. Catherine was left with an empire she'd never expected to inherit again. The estate included 5 commercial properties in Boston worth approximately $8 million, a portfolio of stocks and bonds worth $4 million, the Berkshires estate worth $1.50 million, various other assets totaling another $500,000. All told, Catherine inherited approximately $14 million after charitable donations and taxes. It was overwhelming. What am I supposed to do with all this? Catherine asked Nina over wine one night. Whatever you want. It's yours now. But is it? I mean, Margaret left it to me, but only after spending a year making me feel like I didn't deserve it. Can I even accept this? You can. And you should. She wanted you to have it, Catherine. This was her apology. An apology would have been better when she was alive. True. But she gave you what she could. David Richardson, Catherine's biological father, had his own thoughts. This inheritance is complicated, he told Catherine over coffee. It represents both love and regret. Margaret loved you, but she also hurt you. You can accept the inheritance while still acknowledging that hurt. How do I honor her memory when part of me is still so angry at her? You honor her by being better than she was. By not making her mistakes. Catherine thought about that. Margaret's biggest mistake was letting pride destroy love. Catherine was determined not to do the same. She decided to keep some of the estate and transform the rest into something meaningful. First, she sold 3 of the 5 commercial properties. That netted her approximately $5 million after taxes. With that money, she created the Margaret Hayes Foundation for Young Women in Business. The foundation will provide mentorship, scholarships, and seed funding for young women starting businesses, Catherine announced at the launch event. My grandmother built an empire from nothing. This foundation will help other women do the same. The foundation would fund 20 scholarships a year, provide business mentorship, and offer small grants to women entrepreneurs. It's what she would have wanted, Catherine told reporters. Not in her will, but in her spirit. The response was overwhelming. Applications flooded in. Young women who needed exactly the kind of support Margaret had never received when she was starting out. Catherine kept the Berkshires estate and turned it into a retreat center for the foundation. Women entrepreneurs could come, stay for a week, work on their business plans, get mentored by successful businesswomen. This house was where I learned everything, Catherine told Nina as they walked through the estate, planning the renovations. Margaret taught me business here. Now other women will learn here too. The remaining 2 commercial properties Catherine kept. They generated steady rental income that funded the foundation. Her inheritance wasn't just money anymore. It was a legacy. A living, breathing continuation of everything Margaret had built. 6 months after Margaret's death, Catherine attended the foundation's first scholarship ceremony. 20 young women, all from backgrounds similar to Margaret's, received $25,000 scholarships and year-long mentorships. One of the recipients, a 22-year-old named Maria Gonzalez from South Boston, approached Catherine after the ceremony. "Thank you," Maria said. "This scholarship, it changes everything for me. I can actually start my business now." "What's your business?" "Property management for low-income housing. I want to help families like mine have safe, affordable places to live." Catherine felt tears forming. "That's exactly what Margaret would have done." "What made you apply?" Catherine asked. "I read about Mrs. Hayes, how she came from nothing and built an empire. And I read about you, how you weren't her biological granddaughter, but she left you everything anyway. That story, it meant something to me." "What did it mean?" "That family isn't just blood. That legacy is about what you build, not where you come from. That even when people hurt you, you can honor their better selves." Catherine hugged Maria. "You're going to do amazing things. Because of you. And Mrs. Hayes." Meanwhile, Catherine's relationship with David Richardson deepened. He'd invited her to Seattle to meet his other children, her half-siblings. It was awkward but meaningful. "You're our sister," David's daughter Emily told Catherine. "It's weird, but you're family." "I don't want to intrude on your family," Catherine said. "You're not intruding. You're part of it now." David's wife Rachel, who'd been understandably shocked by Catherine's existence, had come around too. "I won't pretend this is easy," Rachel told Catherine during one visit. "But you didn't choose any of this. And you're a good person. That matters more than the circumstances of your birth." Catherine appreciated that honesty. It was more than Margaret had given her. A year after Margaret's death, Catherine stood in the Berkshires estate, now the Hayes Foundation Retreat Center, and reflected on everything that had happened. She'd lost her grandmother, found her biological father, inherited millions, created a foundation, built something meaningful from pain. Would Margaret be proud? Nina asked, standing beside Catherine as they looked out over the property. "I think so. The old Margaret, the one who taught me to be strong, she'd be proud. The bitter Margaret from the last year? I don't know. Does it matter? No. I guess it doesn't. I'm proud of myself. That's enough." But Catherine's story wasn't over yet. Because Patrick Flynn, bitter about losing his inheritance, had been plotting revenge for a year. And he'd found something. Something that could destroy everything Catherine had built. He'd been digging into Margaret's business history, looking for anything he could use to challenge the will. And he'd discovered something shocking. In 1987, when Margaret was building her empire, she'd partnered with a man named Robert Morrison, Rebecca's father, Catherine's maternal grandfather. The partnership had ended badly. Robert claimed Margaret had cheated him out of millions. He'd threatened to sue, but died of a heart attack before he could. Patrick had found Robert's old documents. Letters, contracts, evidence that Margaret might have committed fraud. And Patrick was about to go public. If Margaret built her fortune through fraud, Patrick told his lawyer, then Catherine's inheritance is tainted. The foundation is built on stolen money. I can destroy her reputation and maybe even force her to return the properties. Patrick scheduled a press conference. He was going to expose Margaret Hayes as a fraud and destroy Catherine's life in the process. Catherine got a call from a reporter 3 days before Patrick's press conference. "Ms. Hayes, I'm doing a story on your grandmother's business practices in the 1980s. Specifically, her partnership with Robert Morrison. Do you have any comment?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Patrick Flynn has documents suggesting Mrs. Hayes defrauded Mr. Morrison out of approximately $3 million. He's holding a press conference Friday. I wanted to get your side before the story breaks. Catherine's stomach dropped. I need to see these documents. Mr. Flynn isn't sharing them yet, but he claims they're explosive. After the reporter hung up, Catherine immediately called Jonathan Chin. Patrick's claiming Margaret committed fraud. Do you know anything about this? Jonathan was quiet for a moment. I know about the Morrison partnership. It was complicated. Did she defraud him? No, but it might look that way if you don't know the full story. Then tell me the full story. Now, Jonathan came to Catherine's office that afternoon with boxes of old documents. In 1985, Margaret partnered with Robert Morrison to develop a commercial property in downtown Boston, Jonathan explained. Morrison put up half the capital, Margaret managed the project. The partnership agreement was clear, 50-50 split of profits. Okay, so what went wrong? The project succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Made about $8 million in profit. But Morrison wanted out, he needed liquid cash for another investment. Margaret offered to buy out his share for $4 million, which was his half. So she paid him fairly? She paid him exactly what the contract required. But Morrison later claimed he'd been pressured into selling, that Margaret had hidden information about future value increases, that he should have gotten more. Did she hide information? No. The future value increases happened because of Margaret's management after Morrison sold. She grew the property's value through her own work. But Morrison claimed she'd planned it all along, that she'd manipulated him into selling before the real profits came. Could he prove that? No. That's why his lawsuit never went anywhere. He had his feelings, but no evidence of actual fraud. Then he died, and the case died with him. So why is Patrick bringing this up now? Because even though Margaret didn't commit fraud, it looks suspicious. Morrison died angry and bitter, claiming he'd been cheated. Patrick's going to use that narrative to damage your reputation. How bad is this going to be? Depends on how the press covers it. Worst case, the foundation loses donors, your reputation takes a hit, people question whether you deserve the inheritance. Best case, you get ahead of the story. Control the narrative. How? Jonathan smiled slightly. By telling the truth. All of it. Catherine spent the next 2 days preparing. She contacted the reporter who'd initially called her and offered an exclusive interview. I'll tell you everything about the Morrison partnership. But I also want to tell you about Margaret Hayes' real legacy. Not the allegations, but what she actually built. The reporter, sensing a better story than Patrick's claims, agreed. The interview published Thursday, 1 day before Patrick's press conference. The headline, Heiress Addresses Fraud Claims. My grandmother was tough, not criminal. Catherine's quote, Robert Morrison was my maternal grandfather. I never knew him, he died before I was born. But I've seen the contracts, the documents, everything. Margaret paid him exactly what she owed him. His bitterness came from regret, not fraud. He sold too early and blamed her for his own bad business decision. The article included documentation showing the partnership agreement, the buyout terms, and evidence that Morrison had been paid fairly. But more importantly, Catherine talked about what Margaret had built after Morrison left. My grandmother took that property and turned it into something worth 3 times what Morrison sold for. Not through deception, but through smart management, hard work, and vision. That's who she was. Not a fraud, but a brilliant businesswoman who saw value where others didn't. The article also profiled the foundation and the women it had helped. If my grandmother's business practices were fraudulent, Catherine said in the interview, do you think 20 young women would have scholarships right now? Do you think Maria Gonzalez from South Boston would be starting her property management business? Margaret's legacy isn't about one bitter partnership from 1985. It's about the empire she built and the women she's helping from beyond the grave. By the time Patrick's press conference happened Friday, the narrative had shifted. Patrick stood at a podium with his lawyer, holding up the Morrison documents. Margaret Hayes built her fortune on the backs of people like Robert Morrison. She cheated him, and now his granddaughter is profiting from that theft. But the assembled reporters had already seen Catherine's interview. They'd seen the actual contracts showing fair payment. Mr. Flynn, one reporter asked. Catherine Hayes provided documentation showing Mrs. Hayes paid Mr. Morrison according to their contract. Do you have evidence of actual fraud, or just Morrison's opinion? Patrick fumbled. Morrison believed he was defrauded. Belief isn't evidence. Do you have proof? The timing is suspicious, but not illegal. Ms. Hayes also pointed out that you stood to inherit millions if she'd been cut out of the will. Isn't this really about your own financial disappointment? Patrick's press conference fell apart. The reporters weren't interested in his allegations without proof. They were more interested in the story Catherine had told, about transformation, legacy, and using an inheritance to help others. By the next day, Patrick Flynn was a footnote. The real story was about the foundation and the women it was helping. Catherine had won. Not by destroying Patrick, but by rising above him. 2 years after Margaret's death, Catherine stood in the Berkshires estate, now fully transformed into the Hayes Foundation Retreat Center, at a ceremony honoring the foundation's 100th scholarship recipient. David Richardson was there, along with his family. They'd become a real part of Catherine's life now. Your grandmother would be so proud, David told Catherine as they watched the young women celebrate their scholarships. Would she? I'm still not sure. I am. This is exactly what she would have wanted. Maybe not what she would have thought to do herself, but what she would have wanted someone to do with her legacy. Nina came up beside them. Speech time. The scholars want to hear from you. Catherine walked to the front of the room, looked out at the faces of young women who reminded her of herself, ambitious, hungry, determined. When my grandmother died, Catherine began, she left me more than money. She left me a choice. I could be bitter about the year we lost. I could be angry about how she treated me. I could let her mistakes define me. Or I could take everything she taught me, about strength, about determination, about building something from nothing, and use it to help others. Margaret Hayes wasn't perfect. She made terrible mistakes. She let pride destroy love. She died with regrets. But she also built something remarkable. And she taught me that your legacy isn't about where you start or who you're born to. It's about what you build. You're all here because you're builders. You're going to create businesses, solve problems, change your communities. And when you do, you'll be carrying forward Margaret's real legacy. Not her fortune, but her spirit. So build something beautiful. Be stubborn when you need to be. Be uncompromising about your values. But don't make her mistake. Don't let pride destroy love. Don't let DNA define family. Don't let one mistake erase 28 years of connection. Learn from her successes. Learn from her failures. And be better than she was. The room erupted in applause. After the ceremony, Catherine walked through the estate alone. She ended up in what had been Margaret's study, now preserved as a museum of sorts, showing Margaret's journey from South Boston to real estate mogul. There was a photo on the desk. Catherine and Margaret, from 15 years ago, laughing together at some long-forgotten joke. Catherine picked up the photo and smiled. I forgive you, she said aloud to the empty room. I forgive you for the last year. For letting fear win. For forgetting that family is a choice, not just biology. But I also thank you. For everything you taught me. For seeing my potential when no one else did. For building an empire and trusting me to carry it forward. I hope wherever you are, you can see what I've done with your legacy. I hope you're proud. But even if you're not, I'm proud. And that's enough. Catherine set down the photo and walked out of the study, into the sunlight, into her future. She'd been a granddaughter, then not a granddaughter, then an heiress, then a foundation director. But most importantly, she'd become herself. And that was Margaret's real legacy, teaching Catherine that identity isn't about DNA or inheritance or what other people say about you. It's about who you choose to be. That's Catherine's story. The story of a woman who lost her identity, her family, and her inheritance, and then rebuilt all three on her own terms. One DNA test revealed she wasn't her grandmother's biological granddaughter. That revelation destroyed their relationship and changed an $18 million will. But in the end, Catherine inherited anyway, not because of blood, but because of love. And what she did with that inheritance? She turned it into something that helped hundreds of young women build their own empires. What would you have done in Catherine's situation? Would you have fought for the inheritance? Would you have forgiven Margaret? Would you have created the foundation, or kept the money? Leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're new to Story Matrix Hub, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because every story here is about identity, family, legacy, and the impossible choices we face when our worlds fall apart. Remember, family isn't just DNA. It's the people who choose to love you, support you, and believe in you. Choose them wisely. And be worthy of being chosen. I'm Story Matrix Hub. Thanks for being here.